Today, I want to dive into a lesson that I've recently learned about myself and how I've applied it. And this was something that I had the recognition to notice some really big win and improvement in this particular area. So, one of the things that in this type of work that you begin to understand in vocabulary is this word narcissism. Narcissism can have lots of different angles to it. It can be very derogatory towards someone. But at the core, the very basic neutrality of this word narcissism, we pretty much all have some narcissistic tendency. And one tendency, here is a very simple, low level, whoa, yeah, there probably is something there. And I'll tell you a quick story about my life that'll illustrate this point. So if you were in a conversation with me, whether it be running into me at the playground or running into me anywhere in life, there is probably a chance we'd have a conversation. And at some point, we would probably maybe talk about your career, what you do for work. And there would be a moment that I would tell you what I do for a living. Now, this is probably very common. Nothing about this story so far that you're listening to sounds probably like, yeah, that sounds like something we all do. We all pretty much eventually tell each other where we are working from. But here is the crux of the conversation and the crux of the lesson. So if you were in a conversation with another man and you're talking about life, sports, whatever, and he has not asked you what you do for a living, and you give it up freely, that is a narcissistic trait. I'll let that sink in there for a minute. If you willingly and on your own accord introduce what you do for a living, especially if you were an entrepreneur like me, this bias is a little bit more heavy. Or if you were in sales where you want him to know, because if he knows, then he might know someone that could connect you with someone. And if you willingly put that information out in the universe without being asked, that is a narcissistic trait. Now, why is that a narcissistic trait? Because on the inside, narcissism is this desire to have the world notice you. Now, there is overt narcissism and covert narcissism. Covert narcissism, you don't really know is happening. And overt is they know it's happening, and you know that this person is an overt narcissist. So in the context of this, when you purposely try to bring attention towards yourself by saying what you do to make you special, you are exercising a narcissistic trait. Now, this most likely flies over the radar by most people, but subconsciously doesn't always feel good because it's a little bit too much of the egocentric where, hey, look at me. I'm a professional speaker, in my case. Pay attention to me. I'm unique. I'm a one of a kind. And that diminishes who I am, because that says that if until I say what I do for a living, that the other person doesn't value me. I'll say that again. Until I tell this person what I do for a living, I don't have value. If you need to say what you do for a living in a conversation so that this other person sees you as a person of value, there's something wrong with you, not the other person. This is something that I've worked through in the last 6 months. This is a lesson that is not easy to overcome because you really have to slow down your conversations. You have to slow down your thinking to be able to witness what this is happening. One acronym that I've used, and I've recorded this in the podcast, is WAIT. Why am I talking? This acronym will help you create that pause to understand why am I talking. What's the win that I had? Well, I'm at the Military Influencer Conference last week, and I'm going through life. I'm going through conversations. I'm networking. I'm making new friendships. And there was a particular one where I was talking to a guy, not a dad, but just a regular guy. He works in Vegas. And it was probably, 25 minutes. And he had only had a chance to talk about himself. He was telling about his job and all the things he did. And it was almost 25 minutes before it ever came up of exactly what it is that I do. And it wasn't something that I gave freely. It was something that I withheld. It was something that I can be a valuable person in this conversation without having to say what I do for a living. I can be unique in this conversation without saying what I do for a living that's unique. It's a distinction in your mind and your growth and the development of your own dad story and your own identity of, can you find value in who you are as the conversation is going without adding all these extra brush strokes to the painting to add clarity on who you are. So to rewind, if you are in a conversation at a networking event or really in any new conversation with someone new, and you forthcome give the information of what you do for a living first, that's a narcissistic trait. Now, it doesn't make you a narcissist, but that is a narcissistic trait, and you definitely don't want to err on the side of being a narcissist. So you want to err on the side of being balanced, whole, calm. This is an easy step to do that and have better conversations, because the true power in conversations, and this is why often leading with that doesn't really do anything, is when you show up and ask interesting questions, you become a person that is interesting. Interesting people ask interesting questions. They are interesting listeners. So if I was talking to another person, for them to say that I was interesting, they would actually really probably know nothing about me. All they would do is probably have this feeling like he is really interested in me, and that makes him interesting. It's kind of a weird psychological trick, but it is true. I learned that from Chris Voss, who wrote Never Split the Difference, former FBI hostage negotiator. Amazing book if you have not read that book. That is all I have for you today. Hopefully this gives you a little bit of a pause, give you some homework, and to get a little bit better each day. I'll be back again with you guys tomorrow.